Welcome to Inspire Me Forward. My name is Linda Watson, and I am the founder and host of this beautiful series of conversations. This is a space where guests from all walks of life and every corner of the world share their stories. We talk about life, love, and everything in between. And this is season 7. We've entitled it Positive Foundations for When Life Throws a Time Shift. There are times in our lives when our relationship to time changes. Sometimes it's a slow burn, and sometimes it's a complete U-turn. Our perspective of time might evolve into a space where we value it more. Perhaps it speeds up, or maybe it slows down. However, we are affected, life does throw time shifts, and in those moments, we are called to look for positive foundations, resources that help us hold our bearings and tend to our resiliency, helping us stay grounded and not float away altogether. So this season, we will speak to folks who have experienced those time shifts and stayed upright through the dynamic force, the change, and the landing. We'll discuss what kept them standing and what did they hold on to so they could settle into that new time perspective with a gentle heart and feet firmly on the ground. So, welcome to season 7 of Inspired Me Forward, and let's talk time shifts. But before we introduce our guest today, let's just take a moment of quiet to land in this space, let our day go for just a while, and be present for the wisdom that is offered in this episode. All right. Well, welcome and welcome through that moment of just landing in this space. I'd love to welcome our guest today, Anita La Selva. And Anita, I will let you introduce yourself.
Thank you, Linda. My name is Anita La Selva. I'm a theater artist, actor, director, creator, writer, and from Toronto, Canada. And thrilled to be here with you today, Linda.
Awesome. Awesome. And we are so thrilled to have you and starting up our season 7. And I want to just, before we dive in, talk about this idea of time shifts. And there is one of my authors in my equine leadership publication. I have a few quotes from her that I'd like to just leave with, put it in the air and leave it there and see, because she wrote about time last year, and her piece was called "How Time Works,"
Mm,
and a couple pieces from there just really caught. I thought they might suit this, and one is time drips, freezes, stretches, and stops, but there's even more to it than that. By way of explaining, allow me to start at what once could have been called the end.
mm. Wow.
Yeah, that's just,
Yeah, that's
there's a
really
lot in
profound.
that.
There's a lot in there.
There is. And her other one is time is not one thing. It does not work in only one direction or at one pace, but it is undeniably one of the great structures by which we can define, experience, and create our existence, including our connection with each other.
Mm, beautiful. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
thought I'd just, put those up in the air and
Hmm.
see what drips and freezes and stops.
Yeah. Drips, freezes, stops. That's
I
amazing.
love that. So, as we dive in, I would love to start with you walking us through the catalyst of what caused this shift in time for you. And I will
So
give you
what
the floor for that.
so what led up to sort of the
Yeah,
big event, the big whatever we want to call it,
absolutely.
crisis,
Yeah, absolutely.
shift in the life? Well,
Yes.
I'm going to have to take us back quite a long time. Um, and that would be probably maybe the early to mid 2000s, I would say. Um, and at the time, my partner and I had been married for a number of years. Both had quite successful careers as independent artists, and we were trying to start a family. And and this was a very difficult task for us, and it didn't come easy like it doesn't for a lot of people. And we struggled for a number of years with conceiving, miscarriages, infertility, then started fertility treatments, and it was a long haul. It was over a period of about 6 years, and it really took its toll on both of us, on our mental health, our physical health. I will say that I was kind of a mess during that time, and just, dealing with the grief and the anxiety and all that, and my partner was as well. But as oftentimes we get wrapped up in our own grief, our own anxiety, our own stuff that we're trying to deal with. And I think I didn't realize how profoundly it had also affected my partner. So we tried for about 6 years and unsuccessfully, and so I never was able to conceive, have children. But during that time, I was really struggling and developed a lot of anxiety. I was having panic attacks, had a lot of issues around, not sleeping. I had sleeping pills, that kind of thing. But my partner, in the meantime, had been struggling with addiction with alcohol. And because I think I was so wrapped up in what I was going through, I didn't realize how acute that addiction had started to become. And the addiction was really fomented by all the grief and the anxiety and the stress around these 6 years of infertility. And what had started off to be someone who was a social drinker, ended up being someone who started to rely on alcohol to numb the pain, to disconnect, to deal with all the stress and the anxiety. And as we know, a lot of folks self-medicate with that kind of stuff. So, by the time I kind of came to terms with not being able to conceive, and I was trying to pull myself out of um, this kind of quagmire that I had been in for several years as a person, and it had affected everything around us. It had affected my work, it had affected my mental health, it had affected my physical health. So I was still trying to sort of pull myself out of it. So, the only way I know how to pull myself out of things is by working. And so I actually went back to school and I did an MFA in directing for theater, which I was doing, and I was hoping that my partner would kind of do the same, and he had a lot of gigs that he had lined up, theater gigs. And but something shifted in him. And as I was trying to shift out of uh, this sort of area of depression and anxiety and grief that I had been feeling over not being able to have children, he and I was pulling myself out by working hard and creating and trying to keep moving through it. He was falling backwards. And so I was out a lot because I was in school and I was in a program where I was, and there from 9 in the morning until 10 at night, and often 5 days a week. And he was also on the road a lot, and his alcoholism just became deeper and deeper and deeper and became more and more and more entrenched. And so, it got to the point then, I had finished my program after 2.5 years, and we were now dealing with someone who had a severe addiction. and was unfortunately in denial about it and did not want to deal with it, did not want to seek help, did not want to admit that it was a problem. And so it was a number of years of struggle for the two of us with that, with me trying to support him, me trying to convince him that, getting help would be the best thing for him, and his refusal to, and saying, they would do it, he would do it himself. Anyway, so this went on for quite a long time until the problem started affecting his health. And then it became not just, and the thing about, again, I think we have a lot of um, there's a lot of preconceived ideas about people with addictions and alcoholism, and we see all these sensationalized things in the media that paint pictures of alcoholics as being these belligerent, violent kind of havoc wreakers in society, when in fact most or a lot of folks suffering from addiction are just sit quietly at home in their room watching television with their drug of choice, right? And they just kind of retreat more and more and more into themselves. And so this was what was happening. So on the outside, you didn't see any signs of bad behavior or anything. You just saw someone who would just say, "No, I don't want to go out. I'm going to stay home. I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to go watch TV," and then would just, so then it would happen that the drinking would mostly happen after I went to bed, um, and he would drink far into the night.
Yeah.
So anyway, so this went on for a while, and then, I think, what really started to happen was he started to get ill. And then he was on a gig out at a theater and literally collapsed and was hospitalized. And he was hospitalized, the doctors were shocked and they were like, "Oh my God, this person is having liver failure." And
Mhm.
uh, and so he was hospitalized for 3 weeks, and we did that and went through the whole detox thing. And then it was only then that we realized how acute the problem was. And so got him through a near-death experience once, came back, thought he was going to be good, tried to get him to go to rehab, wouldn't go to rehab. Then again, the addiction came back again and got acute, and he almost died again for a second time. Went into the hospital for another 3, 4 weeks, came out, and this pattern just repeated. So my mental health was just like off the charts.
Mhm.
I went back to being panicked. I went back to being relying on sleeping pills every day to put me to sleep. I was trying to work. I was trying to make a living. The money that had been spent on the alcohol was phenomenal. Like, we were in debt up to our ears. I thought I was going to have to mortgage the house. So I was in a state of crisis for a couple of years dealing with this. And then the third time he was hospitalized, he never came out. And the addiction had taken so much, and it had done so much damage on his body, that for the last time he was hospitalized, he was in there for 5.5 months straight
Mhm.
through in the hospital before we had to let him go from organ failure, multiple organ
Yeah.
failure from alcoholism. And so, but during that time, I was just living, and this is where we talk about how time is weird. Like, I felt like I was suspended in time during
Mhm.
that period, because it was not just that, like earlier when I was struggling with all this stuff, and we had been struggling earlier, like we could feel the struggle, we were working through it. But this having him in this hospital time for 5.5 months, not knowing, hoping, not and
Mhm.
hoping and not knowing, and I was trying to work, and I was trying to make money, I was trying to pay the bills, I was trying to keep ourselves, us afloat. And
Mhm.
it just really felt like time had morphed into this weird kind of, I don't know if I call it a freeze, but it was kind of a combination of all the
Yeah.
drip, the
Yeah.
freeze, and the stop, in the sense that my world consisted only of this, only of trying to keep making a living, trying to keep working a
Mhm.
little bit of my career going as much as I could at the time, trying to
Mhm.
keep my own sanity, which was right. My mental health was terrible. I was having panic attacks in the middle of the night. I
Mhm.
was I was having massive stress, and so just really that was sort of when it all just kind of hit, is those 5.5 months that I was just trying to cope with that and manage that, and still trying to get him into rehab, and then finding out that the rehab places wouldn't take him because he was too ill. So the only place for
Mhm.
him at that point was the hospital.
The
And
hospital.
having multiple organ failure, kidneys, liver, everything else.
Yeah.
So, it got to the point where I was working my hardest to try to keep him alive and doing whatever I could with the doctors and that. And then it got to the point where we just couldn't do any more for him. And he was So we had to let him go. And so
Yeah.
that was in a weird way, that was a relief, but it was also a big it was felt like a big slap in the face because I had worked so hard and we had tried
Mm.
so hard to keep him alive this time and to get him back on track that then having to let him go was like, whoa. And there's where time really stopped. And I felt like time
Mm.
stopped and it just smacked me in the face because I had been pushing so hard to
Yeah.
try to keep moving through it, to struggle through this, to soldier through it all, to help him, to help us to move forward. And I literally was using, all the little bit of strength that I had left to
Yeah.
try to keep pushing through. And then all of a sudden it's like, nope, that's it. Boom. And so I really feel like time kind of just slapped me right back and pushed me down. And so
Yeah.
that's the big history. And so
Of
that's
course.
that's
Yeah.
that
100%.
big sort of whatever we want to call it,
Sure.
that big event, that time bomb, what that
Yeah.
that piece. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of
Sure.
where it all was. And then I had to start picking up the pieces for myself as a human being.
Of course, yeah, yeah, and that leads to my our next prompt here. Our next question is let's shake that one off, and
Yeah.
let's talk about your healing journey. Let's talk about that carpet gets ripped out and time gets
Yeah.
suspended, but time does go on,
Hmm.
and I believe we all start to feel it going on. And it's like, oh, I have to go with time now. I can't
Hmm.
hold it frozen here. I have to get a new carpet and put it back under me and start to heal. So what did that look like for you? And I know you, and it's been a journey. So
Yeah, it's been a journey.
how did that
Well,
look?
yeah.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Well, I think, initially it was just reeling from the shock and just trying to process everything that I had been through. And, we process in different ways as human beings, right? And it takes some things, and I there were lots of things that I was still trying to process through that. And, a lot of it was coming to terms with him not wanting to go to rehab and refusing to do that. And then feeling like, oh, I could have done more. So I dealt at the beginning, I was feeling guilt, I was feeling grief, I was feeling all these things that come out. And also I think from being the person who holds everything for so long, I was holding it all for so long that I think I had built up so much tension that I just needed to release. And I just was like releasing. Like I'd be sitting in my therapist's office, like crying and just like releasing and releasing. I'd be walking down the street talking to myself, releasing, releasing, releasing. So there was so much that I needed to release in the immediate aftermath. So it almost felt like, like let's say if we talk about time dripping, right? Somebody
Mhm.
had literally pulled the plug out of the bathtub and started to release all this dirty water that had been pent up inside me. And I just was like, I gotta get it out. I gotta get it out. I gotta get it out. And so I was trying to find ways to get it out, and I wasn't really sure what to do. Um, and I had a nice network of friends and stuff, but of course, me as always, I'm such a workaholic anyway, so I threw myself back into my work, and I was working and working and working, but it wasn't really enough to start to heal my spirit.
Mm.
It actually put me on a program, not a program, but it put me in a kind of a more of a regimen of going, okay, well, you have work to do, you have this to do, you have this project to do. So keep working and keep doing that. But so I was managing. I was managing okay. And then interestingly, you know, I was managing, but I wasn't hmm, I would say I was managing okay, but I wasn't taking the steps that I think were the most positive steps for my own sort of long-term healing
Mhm.
at the time. I mean, therapy was great, and I will always advocate for therapy, and it was awesome. But there felt like there was something missing in my healing because sometimes with me, I tend to repeat and I go over and over and over and over things, and sometimes in therapy I would just go over and over and over the same thing. And I was looking for something else, and then a good friend of mine. Um, had met a woman named Jennifer Schramm, and who had been an equine facilitator, and said, "I met this woman, and I think you should go because she does equine therapy." And so I thought, well, because she knew that I loved horses, because I loved horses as a child, and I had ridden horses as a child, and I've always, horses have always been, very important to me and very close to me and very emotional for me. And she said, I think you should try this. She's starting this new business, and why don't you try this? So I said, okay, right. What have I got to lose? I have nothing to lose, and I love horses. And if nothing else, I can just be with the horses again, because, as a young person, I always found horses very inspiring and very emotional for me, and very yeah, just very, very, I don't know, but they felt very close to my heart. And
Mm.
so I thought this would be a good opportunity. So I went to one of those weekends, like a 2-day weekend. Um and there were, I think it was so interesting because I think there were 7 or 8 women. We were all women that weekend, which I find so interesting, that it's always women and horses. Um, but so I went to a 2-day weekend, which was like an introductory sort of weekend to equine therapy and making the heart connection with the horses. And I had I met well, I worked with 3 extraordinary horses. Um, and it kind of changed my life that weekend.
Mhm.
It changed my life in the sense that, yeah, how do I even start talking about this? I get very emotional. I almost get more emotional talking about this healing journey with the horses than I do about reliving the past
Yeah.
that actually happened. And I don't know why that is, but I think it's because the healing is so vulnerable, and it's so
Yeah.
it's very vulnerable, and it's so deep in the heart that I
Yeah.
think that's why it makes me emotional. So forgive me if I get a bit emotional as I talk about this. But yeah, and I particularly work with 2 horses, and
Mhm.
just as a quick synopsis, the
Yep.
first horse was a mare, and when I went into the barn, she kept eyeballing me, and she kept eyeballing me and saying, you, and other people were trying to get close to her, and she kept brushing them off and looking at me and nodding at me and waving her head at me, and I'm like, okay, right. So I worked with her, and so I worked with her, and I got in the ring with her, and it was a very, very strong connection, and I felt her presence very strongly. And then, so we worked a little bit together, and then the facilitator asked me, what's the message? What message are you getting from her? And I said, it's kind of weird, but I feel like she's saying, "Come on, girl, buck up and start getting back to leading people like you do, like you normally do." Oh my God, so emotional here. But anyway, so she was like, I felt she keeps telling me to go back to leading people, because I'm a theater director, and
Yeah.
and at the time I wasn't directing anything.
Ah,
I was feeling very broken, and I feel like I don't have enough. I don't have the strength. I don't have I don't have what it takes right now to lead a whole group of people. And
yeah.
that was one of the issues that I came in with, was that I was feeling very fragile. I was feeling my self-esteem was very, very low, from feeling
Mhm.
like I had not been able to do anything for my partner, and having to, and the stigma of living with alcoholism and all that really
Yeah.
wore down my confidence and who I was, and I was feeling very low. And so she kept kind of looking at me, and the message that I kept getting from her was like, you can lead, like start leading again, like get going, come on. And like buck up. Like she was very practical. And then and then I found out afterwards, when we asked, they told us the story of the horses, and they said, "Oh, she's the lead mare here." And she really likes strong women who like to lead, because she always like thinks that this was the story that I was told about her. Her
Mhm.
name was Lady, and that she's a lead mare, and that she always really likes women who are strong and who are leaders, because as a leader herself, she respects that kind of strength, even though she doesn't want you to lead in front of her. You're still behind her, but so she likes that. And so she's really drawn to women like that. And I said, well, that's really weird, because I don't feel strong right now at all. And it's like, then I started to
Mhm.
realize that horses see deeper. They
That's
see
where you're, yeah.
deeper. They
Yeah.
see you on a deep, deep level in terms of what's inside. And so
Mhm.
I guess why she was telling me this was that she saw that in me, even though it was kind of broken at the time.
Yeah.
But she saw that and she was like, go, go, go. And I thought, okay, that's very refreshing. And so I felt, wow, like that's
Yeah.
so interesting. And I was quite taken with that. And then we had a lunch break, and but then the real healing and learning came when I worked with the second horse,
Mhm.
whose name was Spirit Walker. And when I went to the barn, I looked at this horse, and there were all these beautiful horses, people walking around, and and the other participants, meeting and greeting their horses, and I walked, close to his stall, and he was retreated a bit towards the back of the stall, and he was just there, so silent, looking at me, and just there, and there was something in his eyes that I just burst into tears when I saw him.
Mhm.
And I was just like, oh, I don't know what this is. But I stood there with this horse for about 5 minutes and I was just like weeping with this horse. And he just stood there, silent, present, just there. And he held eye contact with me the whole time.
Mhm.
And I was like, whoa, what is this? And then, you know, um, so then I worked with him in the ring a bit and made that connection with him and I went up to him and I sort of stood in front of him and I was like, okay, very different to my experience with the first horse lady who was very
Mhm.
proactive with me and going, come
Yeah.
on girl, and very jostly with me, and he
Yeah.
just stood there and looked at me and I was like, oh my God. And I had this wave of feeling, okay, this is not going to work. I'm too messed up. He doesn't want to work with me. I don't, he thinks I'm just a wreck and blah, blah, blah. So I started to feel again, that feeling of feeling, unworthy, not good enough, not enough to work with this horse. And so I took a big breath and I said, I just need to take a time out. And I was almost about to bail and tell the facilitator that I needed to sit out for a minute. And I thought, okay, you know what? Don't do that, Anita. Walk away. So I walked to the other end of the ring and I just walked to the other end of the ring and I just faced out and I just thought, just gonna sit here and I'm gonna breathe and I'm just gonna, if nothing happens, nothing happens. That's life
Yeah.
and that's my lesson. That's my
Yeah.
lesson is that I need to heal myself before anyone wants to connect with me. Because I was like, who the hell wants to connect with me in this
Mhm.
state?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I thought. So I was there. I just facing out, facing my back to the horse, my back to everybody, just trying to breathe and trying to ground myself. And then I feel this muzzle on my
Mhm.
cheek. He had come up very slowly and so quietly, I couldn't
Yeah.
even hear him.
Mhm.
He had
Mhm.
walked up very quietly and he rested his muzzle on my cheek just like this for about a minute. And I was
Mhm.
just like, I was in awe and I was flabbergasted. And he rested
Mhm.
his muzzle on my cheek. And then I stood there and I just wept with him. And then all of a sudden he lifted his head and he signaled to me and he's like, come walk with me. So I walked alongside him and we walked around for a while. And then he stopped and he put his muzzle on my cheek again. And, and I was like, okay, wow, this is incredible. And the messages I was getting at the time was, it's okay. I get it. I understand. We all grieve. And then he would signal me to keep walking again. He says, but we have to keep walking. And
Mhm.
so this happened repeatedly several times. And then so the message, and again, when the facilitator always asks you what's the message and what did you get from the horse? What did you glean? And I said, well, I was so clear. It was like he's like, I get it. I understand grief. We know grief, you and me, but we have to keep walking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that then was my big takeaway is that yes, we have to acknowledge that we have grief and we have had pain and the grief as a horse in his early years, and he had been passed around from owner to owner to owner, and didn't have any
Mhm.
friends, and had originally been rejected by the herd initially, and so was had been very lonely and alone, and obviously a horse that understood grief and connected to my
Yeah.
grief, and when he sensed. And so I was then able to let myself go and just really be in that state with him. And
Mhm.
so I always say that horse changed my life because I walked away from that sort of weekend um, with these words that Spirit Walker had shared with me, this horse had shared with me, and that is like, yes, we have grief and but we got to keep walking. And so I started walking. I took up a practice of walking. And so I
Mm,
would walk every day. I would walk every day through the neighborhoods, all the different places around. I mean, I live in the city downtown, but I would just walk and I'd walk and I'd walk. And so I built up this walking. I'd walk for an hour to an hour and a half a day, just walking, thinking of what Spirit Walker offered me and going, okay, I'm not going to deny being in my grief. I'm not going to pretend it's not there, but I'm still going to keep moving. I'm going to keep walking. And slowly, as I walked, and then, for the first little while, it was all about the walking and the grief. But then
mm,
eventually the grief started to subside, or it would only be there for a while. And then my mind started finding more creative thoughts. And I started thinking more creatively again, which I hadn't been thinking creatively for quite a long time.
mm,
And so the walking and the creative thoughts, and then I started thinking about, um, you know, what can I do with this? Like, what can I do as an artist with this? And then I started, so then and as artists, we all create in different ways, and I create theater, so I started sort of imagining these images and these images on stage from my past, from this, and also about me and Spirit Walker and this extraordinary experience that I had had with this horse. And so I don't know how it came about, but then I realized that maybe I need to make a play about my journey of
mm,
going through this, of what it was like dealing with someone else's addiction, being a caregiver, having my own issues, my own sleeping pill addiction at the time, having my own mental health issues, and how horses helped to heal me.
mm,
Because I just felt this was an extraordinary experience, and that you know and the power in this world that animals have. And I mean, I've always been a huge animal lover. Horses, cats. I have cats. I've had cats my whole life. I would have more horses if I could afford them, but and then just how healing animals can be for us, and how oftentimes we look so outside ourselves for something outside to heal us, whereas the horse was like, look inside and heal from your heart, from the inside out and not from the outside in. And that was so clear to me, in the sense that, and that's what I started to realize after that experience with that horse, is that it has to come from in the heart and in the spirit, that you can start to heal. And you can't look for other things and other people or other things to help to heal you. You have to start it by doing your own work, by breathing, by connecting with your heart, as you do with the horses, making the heart connection, and as you do by trying to work from within. So I started to work from within, and the seeds of creativity just started to sprout, and I started to get this idea about making this play. And
mm,
the type of theater that I create is very interdisciplinary, meaning it's not necessarily like a family drama with a beginning, middle, and
mm,
end. It's more like a collage type of theater where you're experiencing a theme, something about a theme, and we see different vignettes on it. So that's kind of how I create my theater
mm,
anyway. And so I started to see these different images, me and the horse, me in the hospital, different
mm,
metaphors for how I felt. And one of the big metaphors that I felt during the whole process when I was dealing with the addiction was, I felt like I was, and this was even before my equine therapy weekend, was I felt like I was holding a team of horses. Now, I've never driven a team of horses. I've only
mm,
ridden one horse at a time, but I just had this feeling that
mm,
I was trying to drive a team of horses on this like chariot. And maybe it's because as a child I was
mm.
obsessed with all those movies
Yep.
around Christmas and Easter,
Mm.
Charlton Heston and the Chariot Drivers. I was
Yep.
obsessed with those movies, and I was always terrified for the horses as a child. I was always like, the horses, and so in my mind, this became this huge metaphor for the addiction, and
Mm.
this me driving this chariot and trying to hold on to the reins. And so
Yeah.
so that metaphor started then manifesting in my imagination as to how I could put it on stage. And
Sure.
so I am creating a play. It's going to be happening very soon in May. So that's one of the central images, one of the central metaphoric images that I have of me driving this unseen team of horses, because it is unseen team of horses, because it actually represents the addiction. So how am I putting my personal experience and translating it into something artistic? And so
Yeah.
that has been a huge healing process for me, because it's forced me actually to reflect on everything that happened again, and then also reflect on how I can put that into something that I can share with the public. And also then,
Mm,
as we know, memory shifts every time you go back to a memory. Like every time we go back to a memory, we see
mm,
it with fresh eyes. So our memory of the memory of the memory of the memory shifts a little bit. And there's time for
mm.
you again, right? There's
Yeah, exactly.
um how time can shift things a little bit, how time can shift things very, very slightly. And so
Mm,
in this process, I've taken, my lived experience, and I've with the help of the horse have found a way to start dreaming a whole project and processing things that happened to me and being able to translate them into images and text and choreography as well. Yeah, so that has been a huge healing journey for me, not just
yeah.
an artistic journey, but also a healing journey. And I feel in a weird way it's made me so much stronger because now I'm able to look back on the events without the same kind of guilt and shame and all that kind of stuff, and realizing that and also really made me come to terms with addiction in terms of how we don't talk about it as a society and how
Mm,
it's hidden and how we need to deal with it and talk about it more as an illness and not just like like a stigma, or a weakness in someone. So that journey
yeah.
is extra. I'm still on it. I'm going into rehearsal in less than a month. So for the final production. So yeah.
Awesome. How do you, I love, I want to catch a few of these things much of these things that you said here. Um, but you talked about guilt and shame, that now you can look at things differently. So like talking about emotions over time
Mhm,
when, we're in the thick of something, and as time moves on, just how do what has to leave? What do we have to release
mhm,
so that we can move forward, but look back? I heard something recently that we can look at the past as being connected by a chain or being connected by a thread.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
So how
mhm,
do
mhm.
yeah, I'd love to just
Yeah.
dig in that one a bit because
Yeah.
how you talked about it at first and how you're talking about it now are very different.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, for me, I mean, I'm an acting teacher as well. That's what I also do. So, and this is something that I talk about with my students a lot, and that is how do we process the traumatic experiences in our lives and the critical moments and the pain and the grief and the whatever, the fear, the trauma, whatever it is. And for me, it's like I don't think we ever move past anything. And I think that's a fallacy that people tell themselves. And for me, I feel that we move through things. We don't move past them. And that my experiences from the past, they will always be with me. And I will never forget them and I will never get over them.
Yeah,
I will just learn how to manage them better. Like again, being an artist, I have all these metaphors. Like for me,
sure.
I say to my students, like, I am a sum of my experiences in the past, and I carry them all with me all the time. It's just that I choose when I can go and bring, and sometimes I say, I feel like I'm a big barrel, like, one of those big wine barrels. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a big barrel, and behind me, then this barrel are all my experiences and all of the emotions and everything that I have.
Mhm.
And they're all there. They're all there. They're all
Mhm.
kind of live, but I choose now when I want to pull out certain emotions or certain
Mhm.
experiences. And if I need this experience from back behind me to bring it out as an actor, for example,
Yeah.
I'm going to bring that out, and I'm going to bring it out because I know what it is. I processed it. I'm holding it. I haven't tried to put it out of my mind. Because
Mhm.
why? Like, I think what's important is we need to own stuff. And I think that stigma and judgment and shame force us to we feel often as people that we need to cover it up and suppress it.
Mhm.
Whereas I'm now, and also being an acting teacher, I'm like, don't suppress it, acknowledge it, bring it out, let it be there, understand
Yeah.
what it is, understand what it's done to you, understand how it has affected you, and say, okay, thank you. I don't need you on a daily basis. You can sit back there for a while. And I might call on you later on when I need you or when I'm feeling in a certain way to come back into my present moment and then I can re-experience you in a different way because now you're in the past. So for me, it's all about accepting what I've lived through and my experiences, but not letting it dominate my daily life. And I
Yeah.
think that's a lot easier than suppressing and forgetting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not. I'm just kind of going, you sit there at the back.
Yeah.
You get to the back of the room
Sure.
for a
Yeah.
while,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
go to the back of the room for a while. You're still there. I know you're there. I live with you every day. But I'm not going to let you dominate my moment to moment life on a daily basis. And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's not about moving past, it's learning how to live with all that. And
Yeah.
and I think, that's the beauty of us as human beings is we have capacity. And I think that some of us feel that we don't have the capacity to hold all that we've experienced, and that's why we try to forget it. But I think in forgetting, we're actually cutting a part of ourselves off, and we're also creating a backlog of pressure
Sure.
that when when you try to suppress something, like it comes out. It's going to come out somehow,
Exactly.
and I think that's something that's also something that I talk about in my play a lot is that we have to process our grief, we have to move through it, and as the horse told me, keep walking. And if you, because walking has momentum, right? Walking is not stagnancy. Walking is not
Mm-hmm.
stopping. You may be walking and just not doing anything. You may be walking and just crying the whole time, but that's something you're processing. You may be walking and having amazing creative thoughts, and I've been through all those types of walking, nothing, crying, creative thoughts, but you're walking and you're moving through, you're processing, right?
Yeah.
The more we can process and it's just like when we see horses, right? We'll see them. They'll have little tells, right? Well, they're releasing something. Oh, they've
Mm-hmm.
been holding. They'll release that. They'll do a shudder, or they'll yawn, or there's something. So they just have these natural mechanisms built in that will allow them to release and not hold on to things. Whereas human beings, our
Sure.
minds are like we just hold on to stuff for dear
Yep.
life, and we don't have those beautiful sort of autonomic releases
Mm-hmm.
that animals have.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to kind of convince ourselves of ways to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of, where I'm coming from in terms of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, for sure. I really like how you talked about that you were filling time and then realized that it was the healing of the spirit that had to happen. And it's funny you talked about the horse and sort of turning inward. And I always have this saying when I have clients is like the horse will turn you back to yourself to
Mm,
show you what was inside you all along.
yeah. Yeah. You're so right,
And
Linda. Beautiful.
it's always there. But can you talk more to that healing the spirit? Like we fill time. We're again going back to we're all human and we love to fill time. And especially when we're in grief and we're in trauma and we're in that we fill that time with stuff
Yeah.
where there's a moment where we go, oh, but that's no enough.
Hmm.
I'm going to give myself time to heal my spirit.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
I don't know if you want to, sort of
Yeah. Well,
talk about.
I think that there's, and I will say that I've experienced this a bit of a fear of the void, right? In the sense
Mm,
that I think there's a fear of the void that we have as human beings, and that keeping ourselves busy is a way of avoiding the void,
mhm,
and also of convincing ourselves that we're okay because we can keep doing all the things, we can keep doing the tasks. So I think that for me, at least, that was part of it, is that doing things and doing stuff with my body, with my whatever, with my work, with my stuff, was a way of trying to convince myself that I was going to be okay, that I was going to survive. Because there was a part of me, I think, inside that was afraid that I was afraid for a long time that I would never have a good night's sleep again, ever. And that was terrifying to me, because I'd spent way too many nights on 0 hours sleep, and felt that collapse in the body and mind and spirit. And so I think there was a fear that I would never be able to heal myself. So that part of me thought, well, at least if I can, get myself busy, then at least I'll be doing stuff to not allow me to dwell on the dark stuff, and on the fact that I may never get my full capacity of feeling whole and healthy and strong again. I had resigned myself that I may never feel like that again at the time. And so I think that's why I just kept feeling busy because at least I need to do something to cope, right? But I
Mhm.
think that allowing ourselves to actually free fall into the void is
Mhm.
really important. And it's terrifying. It's
Yeah.
terrifying. And but I think that's really important. And just stop, like sometimes sometimes, and this is really hard to say to somebody who's a type A person like me, is stop fighting. Stop fighting. And and I refuse to stop fighting with my partner's addiction. I refused. I just didn't. I literally was right there, right to the last, and I was fighting until the last minute of his
Mhm.
life. And then I didn't want to stop fighting. So I kept fighting in different ways, like doing the work and keeping busy and blah, blah, blah. And then, I started to realize that this was not healing me, and I needed to actually free fall into the void and spend time alone in the house by myself,
Yeah.
just breathing, just doing whatever, feeling terrible, feeling like a piece of
Yeah.
poo, whatever, and just allowing myself to feel the feelings and feel the thoughts and accept that this is what had happened and that I just need to live in this surrender. It's, like again, as an acting teacher, I call it surrender. Surrender into what you're feeling, into the moment, and don't try to block it, hide it, or deflect it, avoid it.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it was about choosing to free fall, and actually working with the horses really helped me to do that a lot more, because after I worked with them, I was so much more, I guess, because I think what the horses gave me back was hope for
Mhm.
myself. And so having just that little tiny bit of hope that the horses gave me
Mhm.
the courage to free fall into all that had happened to me and all the emotions and everything. And so I think that is how the actual healing journey started, was me allowing myself, after my experience with the horses, to have that tiny bit of hope that maybe I was going to be okay,
Yeah.
that I could breathe again, that allowed me to have the courage to go, yeah, let's just free fall it and see what happens. And
Yeah.
yeah, and we are more resilient than we think as human beings. And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
something that I really learned, and
Yeah.
something that, that the horses will teach us, right? As we know how resilient horses can be when they've been neglected, abused, starved, and this, and how they can come back and
Yeah.
just, they can go through hell and come back, and they're so resilient. And I think that we are as human beings too, and we don't realize it. Sometimes we don't have confidence in ourselves that we're that resilient. And that's what that showed me, is that we as humans are way more resilient than we think we are.
Yeah.
And part of our resilience is actually letting go.
Oh, totally.
Right?
Absolutely. Surrender. Just, yep.
Just
Like
surrender.
I always think of it laying back on in the river and just
Yeah.
let the water take me
Yeah. Yeah.
and take me where I
Exactly.
need to go
Yeah.
on the river of life. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I know you went back to the horses with your team that you have now for your play. Uh,
Yes.
and I know you had time with them. Anything from that sort of pushed you forward or helped you go forward even more?
Yeah, actually, and Linda, you were there.
I
You were
know.
part of that facilitation team. You were amazing. You and Jen were fantastic. So yes, and yeah, you witnessed what sort of, I brought my team, my for my theater play, my dramaturg, my directors, my designers, so that they could really understand. I wanted them to understand what it was like to be with the horses and what I was talking about in this play, because the play is very much about exactly what I just talked about.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like an odyssey of this journey, this insane journey that I've been on. So I brought my team back to um, where Spirit Connections, where a Spirit Walker lives, the horse lives, and I really wanted to see him again because I hadn't seen him in years, and he had been the horse that had inspired me the whole time. So I've been living with this inspiration of this horse. So I had a lot of, like, I was nervous and excited to see him, and also a bit like, am I crazy? Like, did I just make all this up in my head? There was a part of me that was feeling like, oh gosh, like, have I just made up this huge fantasy about this horse? Um, but and I had the opportunity to work with him, and you were there facilitating, Linda. And I remember that I was in the ring and I was very nervous, and you're like, Anita, just slow down, take a breath, ground yourself, right? And I was nervous and excited at the same time. And then I finally did sort of slow my breath down and I connected with him and I still felt that same extraordinary deep heart connection that I remember from, the years ago that I had felt with him. Like again, I don't think I've ever really felt that connection with a horse ever. That deep empathy, understanding and present and being so present. um, I always say that I've never been felt more present than I do when I'm working with these therapy horses. It's extraordinary. And so it was really interesting because it was a very quiet moment that we had together and a few moments that we spent together. And I was just standing there, and then eventually he came up to me and he put his head over my shoulder, which was quite beautiful and very close where his cheek was now. His cheek now, not his muzzle, his cheek this time was up
Yeah.
against mine.
Yeah.
And he had his head over mine, and we were just there standing. And it was a really extraordinary message that I got from him. Not the message that I was hoping for, but the message that I got was, you don't need me anymore.
Mm.
You don't need to cling to my memory, to me anymore. You can do this on your own. There, I'm very emotional again about that. But it was so clear, but it was given that message with such compassion and such understanding. It's not like, oh, go away, you don't need me. He's like, you don't
Yeah.
need to hold on to me so tight. I think what I got was, you don't need to hold on to me so tightly anymore. You can do this. You can do this on your own. I'm still here, but you're doing this now.
Yeah.
So you don't need to hold on to me like you were before. Because the whole time, as I've been creating this project, I've
Yeah.
been holding on to his spirit, his messages.
Yeah.
I don't know. Um, and I got that. And so I walked out of the ring feeling like it was kind of bittersweet in the sense that I was so happy to connect with him and so grateful for his message and his warmth and his compassion. But I was also like, oh no, I don't need you anymore. What do you mean? Now I have to do this on my own. So it was a little bit like, ah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it was an extraordinary moment for me. Just an extraordinary moment for me to connect with him again. And this is close to like
Mm.
7 years later, almost, right?
Was it that long in
Yeah.
between? Wow.
Yeah, six, seven,
Wow.
6 or 7 years.
It's an
Um,
interesting,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
an
So
interesting, we talk about letting go, an interesting feeling that brings up when somebody else in a compassionate way lets you go.
yeah, yes,
And our
yes,
tendrils want to hold that, but
yes.
they're doing it in a loving way. Like you said, you don't need me. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh no, but I do. And
Yeah,
sit there.
exactly. Exactly. That's exactly what happened, Linda. It's
Yeah.
exactly what happened there. And he was saying it to me, he was giving it to me in such a loving way and such a
Yeah.
compassionate way. And that's why it was extraordinary. It was an
It's a
extraordinary
gift.
moment. Such a
Yeah.
gift, such a gift.
Yeah.
And a true healer, that horse. Oh my gosh. True healer. Yeah. Yeah. At least for me.
Yeah. So how are you now?
How am I now? I'm good. Like I'm really good. Like I'm feeling, and I'm also because I'm an artist, I'm always carrying my emotions on my sleeve, right? So I'm
Mhm.
like, oftentimes I say to people, I'm gonna get emotional here, but it's a good thing. Like it's actually a really like even now as I've been chatting, I'm like, oh, I'm teary-eyed about this and that, but it's all in a very positive way now. And I feel like I've regained my strength, I've regained my confidence,
Mhm.
I've regained my essence as an artist. If anything, I feel like I'm a stronger artist than I've ever been in
Mhm.
my life. And
That's
have after having gone through all this stuff, because I feel like kind of like, well, what else is there? What else is gonna,
bring it on.
some of these worst things, these are some of the worst things that you can go through in your life as a
Oh,
human
right.
being,
Yeah.
infertility, miscarriages, death of your addiction, death of your
Yeah.
partner. Like, come on, like what more? Like, bring it
Yeah.
on. I'm like, bring it on.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
But you
Like,
have the tools. You have
I
you
have the
have those
tools.
tools
Yeah.
to, if and realizing that you have to walk through it.
Yeah.
You have to, like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
doesn't
And
mean we're going to avoid it.
no,
It
absolutely.
means we can walk, as you
We,
said, walk with it and
yeah.
walk through it.
Yeah. And someone sent to me once that had another great metaphor, not in my play, but
Mhm.
was you can't outrun a forest fire. The best way to deal with a forest fire is to run through it and find the path to the other side.
Yeah.
And so, but that takes courage, and I
Mm.
think I have a lot more courage now in the sense that,
Mm.
there were times when I didn't think I could do things, and I think part of working with the horses showed me that I could and that I can. And so now I live in a lot less fear as a human being than I used to. And
Uh-huh.
that's a good feeling. I still get nervous about certain
Of course.
things and this and that, of course, whatever. I still worry about things, but just in general, in my inner sort of person is
Mhm.
less fearful, um, and yeah, more courageous, I think.
Sure. And you're still walking.
And I'm still walking.
One question I just want to touch on here because we didn't touch on it because you sort of mentioned at the beginning there that you had support, you had community, but at the beginning as you were going through this, it sort of felt like you were like, yeah, like weren't ready, like to
Yeah,
hold that
yeah.
community. What's the difference now with support and community and those around you?
Well, I think I've developed a greater appreciation in the sense that I mean, you know how sometimes when sometimes it's hard to ask for help, do you know?
Mhm.
And I've always
Mhm.
been a person who's found it hard to ask for help. That's just my nature. I'm always like, I'll do this by myself, I'll manage by myself. And I realized that I was trying during the whole ordeal, I was trying to manage things by myself, and that's what just about killed me, was me trying to
Mhm.
manage everything by myself and not seeking more support and help from friends and people who would have wanted to help. And so I think, and I don't know what that was. I don't know whether that was had to do with my own disinclination for help. It could have had to do with the shame, the judgment, the stigma of
Mhm.
or the denial about not wanting help at the time. Um, but I think now it's, coming to terms with our truths is so important. And I think, now that I've come through and really confronted the truths around things, that I think I've realized that it's far better for us as humans to seek more community, seek out community,
Mhm. Yeah.
and not try to do things alone. I mean, it's like the herds of horses, right? They don't thrive alone, right? Neither do we. They thrive in community with the support of your community, and I think that we do too. And somehow society has convinced us that being alone or leaving your family or leaving doing things alone is like the thing to do, or I don't
Mhm.
know, but I think that we have to get away from that notion and go back to the sort of a more village mentality,
Yeah.
of we are a village of people, of human beings, living, breathing,
Yeah.
who feel, who have compassion for each other. And I think that would make life so much easier. And I wish I'd embraced that earlier.
Yeah. Our human herd.
Yeah, our human herd.
Our human herd. So thank you for sharing this. Um, can we hear more about the play and when it's coming up and
Yes. And
what
also the
you...
article that I wrote in Equine
Yes, please.
Leadership.
Yes.
Yes, I wanted to
Okay.
mention that, Linda.
Yes.
Thank you so much for inviting me to write that piece last year. That story with Spirit Walker is in that edition, I think edition 10. Yeah, which was a great opportunity and really wonderful way to express my gratitude to Spirit Walker and share with, horse community the
Mhm.
power. And just to reiterate, which you all know, which everyone knows already,
Mhm.
just the power of the healing power of horses. So yeah, so that article is has
Yeah.
and I've, a lot of people have read the article and just, really been um happy to read it and found it, and also the whole magazine, which is amazing, and
Excellent.
and how we can learn from horses. My God, we can learn
Sure.
so much from horses. But yeah, so the play, it's called 12 Leaders, 8,800 Steps, and like I said, it's been in development now for 4 or 5 years, and we're finally getting a full production at the Factory Theatre in Toronto, May 1st to 17th. And I'll be there on stage playing a version of myself and an 8-year-old version of myself as well.
That's awesome.
Um, and my colleague and wonderful actor, collaborator, Brad Cook, who I think you met, Linda, at the workshop, he'll be playing the horse. So he will be playing a
Mhm.
version of Spirit Walker on stage. I would have loved to have brought up the real horse, but there's so many complications with that, so I couldn't really bring a real horse on stage.
So many
But yeah,
twists and turns,
so
everything. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So the play is happening, and I'm really thrilled,
Okay.
and yeah, really excited for folks to come and see it. And like I think it's for anyone who, if you love horses, it's a no-brainer. But if you've ever been a caregiver, if you've ever been in crisis,
Mhm.
if you've ever, felt like you've been in the dark for so long and you don't know how you're going to get yourself out of it, I feel like it's a play that can speak to all those things, all those people.
Mhm.
Finding some kind of silver lining in the dark when you just feel like there's nothing there. Um, yeah, and also caregiving. Some folks who came to see the workshop, I did a workshop showing a while back and
Mhm.
said, well, I don't know anything about addiction, but I do know about caregiving. And in our
Yeah.
society these days, caregiving is such a huge thing with our aging population and our, aging parents, grandparents, and that, and that you really, talk a lot about what it is, the stresses to be a caregiver,
Mhm.
and the toll that it takes on how you're trying to manage your love and your care and your life and your finances and everything when you're caring for a loved one who is not
Mhm.
well, regardless of what the illness is.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So
Oh,
I'm hoping it
absolutely. Yeah.
speaks to I'm hoping it speaks to a wide variety of people. Yeah.
Oh,
And it's and it,
absolutely.
and it does have some moments of lightness. Like I said, I play an 8-year-old version of myself, which is light and dark at the same time. But there are
Yeah.
some moments of joy, which are quite lovely,
Good.
with the horse especially. With the
Oh, yeah.
horse especially.
Oh, I am so looking forward to seeing it, and um yeah, I just how do you final comments on time?
Hmm.
What
Wow.
has time shifted for you? What just final comments on time?
Final comments on time would be that I think for me is to accept that time is very mercurial for me, in the
Mm,
sense that at certain points in my life, I feel like, oh, the days are just stretching out so long, and then on. And so that um, time for me is a reflection of what's going on inside me, and my relationship with time is very much a reflection of what's going on inside me on a deep level, because that's how I experience
mm,
time. And so if I am in a place of uh, high energy and moving through lots of different things and shifts, then time is just flying for me. And
mm,
other times I feel like, oh, I can't wait. This is how am I still here in this moment? Um, because time is moving so slowly. So I feel like we can never put our finger on how time is
mm,
going to move for us, or how we're going to be affected by it. But I think that, again, I go back to the whole surrender idea
mm,
of surrender to what time is offering you, and listen to what time is offering you, in the sense that,
mm,
right, some days time may be like, nah, we're going fast today. And other days time may be like, well, time's moving slow, and just accepting that, not judging it, and not thinking,
mm,
oh, I'm wasting my time if I'm not doing anything today. Because sometimes those days when and I've been guilty of this, where I feel like, oh, this day I didn't do much this day, but I did, because I actually went inside and I worked on
mm,
myself, my spirit, my just let my mind go calm, and maybe just sat on the couch with my cats half the day and drank tea. And that time, my psyche needed that time.
exactly.
And it's
Exactly.
not about accomplishment in time. It's about understanding what time can do for me in each moment,
Mm,
I think.
I love that. Perhaps we start to listen to time.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great way of
Yeah.
putting it, Linda.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Thank you so much for sharing this and
Oh,
sharing
thank you.
your
Thank you.
journey. And we are so excited for this play. You've been working for so long and gone through ups and downs and everything
Mm.
to come to this. So
Well, what a pleasure to be on this podcast, Linda. Like, what the
yes,
work you do is extraordinary, and
thank you.
and I'm so happy to be part of this, and
Excellent.
part of this community. Yeah.
Sure, thank you. And we will put a link to your story
Amazing.
in our summary. And um, is there a link to the factory theater that we could put on there and people can keep an eye so when
Yeah,
the tickets do
yeah,
come on
yeah,
sale?
yeah.
Okay,
I
good.
can get you that.
Awesome. So we will put that up as well.
Amazing.
And
Thank you.
so thank you. And thank you all that are listening to this at some time in the future, at some time in time. Really, at Inspire Me Forward, we believe that we inspire others when we share our stories and that collective connection. And we really let each other know that we're not alone in this big, beautiful world that we're in together. The courage it takes to share one story might be the very thing someone else needs to open their heart to a brighter tomorrow, to that hope that Anita was speaking of. So the one thing we do ask at Inspire Me Forward is that you share it forward. You just never know who else needs to hear the words and wisdom that was shared here today. So we do ask that you share it forward. And from my heart to yours, stay well, stay connected, and stay inspired.